Welcome to the WP-Tonic podcast in WordPress and Tech. It's episode 662, and I'd like to introduce you to the guests. So, Sally, like to introduce yourself?
Certainly. I am Sally Getch, the WP fangirl and full-site editing junkie.
Oh, yes, full-site editing. And my co-host and the founder of the WP-Tonic podcast, Jonathan, most frustrated at his current host, but introduce yourself, Jonathan. Tell everybody about yourself.
I'm never frustrated. How you could use that link to me, I do not know. But I'm the founder of WP-Tonic. If you're looking to build a e-learning or membership website on WordPress, we're the people to help you do that.
And nearly finally, because I'm going to introduce as well, Spencer Foreman.
Thank you. It's Spence from WPLaunchify.com.
Brilliant. And I'm Andrew Palmer from AI. I am your host this week. And we're just going to take a short break for our sponsor, Castos. Be back in a moment. And if you'd like to find out more about Castos and the deals, you can go to WPTonic.com and go to our partner page and see what's going on with our other sponsors and enjoy what they've got to offer you. Castos are one of the best podcasts I've actually signed up to it personally as well. I'll be doing a podcast in the next 6 months or so. So now we're going on to our first story. Quite controversial, really. Elementor have got 10 million installs. They've celebrated it this week and last week and the week before. And they've now done a brilliant offering on pricing, and they're getting into the WordPress WordPress management state. What do you think about this, Sally? Elementor, are you an Elementor user?
No, I'm not an Elementor user. I've used it a couple of times. It seems like a good product, but I just committed to Gutenberg early on and so didn't do the Elementor thing. What I think about this particular find the right plan for you page is that it's going to give me a migraine if I look at it for very long because that vibrates so much. But we have been talking on this show about the likelihood of Elementor having some kind of hosted offering for months at least, maybe longer. And they have gone and done it. And the pricing is pretty competitive. I don't know what the hosting is like or any of the rest of it, but it is a very sensible move on their part. And it may be popular with the people who want to stick to Elementor and not wrestle with keeping up with all of the changes in the block editor.
Yeah, that's true. But I think it's more like a Wixie kind of move and making it an all-encompassing offering. What do you think, Jonathan?
I think it's like an electric prod that's been rammed up the backside of the great leader, basically. The gloves are off. It's going to get dirty and ugly quite rapidly, I reckon. It was predicted by most of the panel, Spencer, myself, you. It was pretty obvious. There was this story that Wix, I understand from my sources that there was a negotiation, but it didn't work out. I think it's a great thing. I think competition's great. I think it's great for the WordPress community. I think it's great in general. I'll be interested to see what Spencer's got to say about it, but that's my thoughts, Andrew.
Yeah, I think it's also going to affect WordPress hosting companies. They're thinking what's going on at Nexus and Liquid Web have got this offering where they kind of do a similar thing with a WAS. What do you reckon, Spence?
Yeah. First of all, I think this is actually anecdotal evidence of something that I heard through the grapevine, which was that the deal with Wix buying them isn't at least happening right now. So you can see from the way that this is structured that this is really just a bread and butter. We might as well host it ourselves, because for $89 a year, we can just give somebody a one-stop experience where everything is curated and ready to use. Essentially putting Elementor in the same position as HostGator or GoDaddy or Liquid Web or any of the other people that are offering the reverse. Here's a bunch of stuff that gets you to come to our hosting because we realized like we're going to need a lot of people, and it's better than offering you $7 a month for a basic space. We can include Elementor in there and a bunch of other tchotchkes, and now you'll pay us $89 a year. And it's, you know, I don't know what the math works out to, but it's about $7, right? Roughly, give or take, it's 84, 89. So it's like we're in the Disney, Netflix, Hulu membership economy. They realize they've got a shit ton of people. They've got to babysit those people in some way. Might as well do it on a platform. Asking you, Andrew, back to you, where's Nick Roach's hosted offering on Divi for this? Because it would seem to be just as logical that Divi ought to be doing that.
I've got a feeling that it's going to happen, but I mean, I'm not in constant contact with Nick as I was when I was running Elegant Market.
You know, through the grapevine, you know,
trying to be friendly and upfront about stuff. But they are going, and actually, there's another thing I want to say about that. But there's they will do that. If they don't, then they don't. They've got their own reasoning. But I think last year or maybe even 2 years ago, they recommended hosts. So SiteGround are a recommended host. I think Bluehost are even a recommended host. You know, there's a few recommended hosts that then, if you've got a license key and start up an instance and you say I want Divi installed automatically, they will do the whole package. So they'll install Divi, Monarch.
Can I make a pause for a second on that? Sure. I want to say something that I don't think a lot of our listeners understand about how the economics of the WordPress hosting and even Stripe relationships work. And here's an example. When I was involved with firstwebdesigner.com and some of our other vertical clients, certain hosts like HostGator in particular really heavily front load for affiliates. So in other words, if you get a person to sign up for an account through your affiliate number, you just have to have them sign up. And I don't even know if it's 3 months they have to stay. They have to stay a very short time, and you get an extraordinarily large amount of money. For example, on an account that they may pull in $84 a year on, they're paying you in some cases $125 to $150 is what I was getting paid.
How do they even manage that?
Because they realize that it's sticky. They dollar cost average like how long people stay, and they figure if you get them to us, they'll never leave. And so it's a 3-year or longer kind of payout, but they realize the person's there forever. So what I want to say, this also happens in the world of Stripe with WooCommerce. Stripe has deals with WooCommerce where it's 2.9% plus 30 cents for every transaction that Stripe takes. Yep. They give a piece of that to WooCommerce because in WooCommerce there's the Stripe gateway, or through Gravity Forms or something else. And the economy of WordPress is very interwoven that way. So when we talk about these deals, the logic is simple. Loss leader, right? We're going to make a partnership with a hosting company. We don't know it, but there's a good chance that whoever this Google Cloud platform, they're paying Elementor $150 for everybody who signs up. It could very well be the truth.
Well, it's cost of acquisition, isn't it? You know, they say that, you know, when I was working with NTL, for instance, that their cable was $21.99 a month. And at the time, it was the cheapest cable by about 10 quid. But the actual cost of acquisition was over £750, right?
Exactly.
So it took a while for you to get that money back. So that, and we all think, you know, cost of acquisition for, say, a $30 plugin could be $54, $55. We've done the sums on that, and we know that what that cost of acquisition is. So you basically lose the first 2 months subscription. And if you're doing recurring commission as well, affiliates, you're kind of losing that as well. But I think I don't know why WordPress would be either annoyed or put out by this Elementor move, because yes, there's WordPress.com, which is the commercial side. So if anyone should be put out by it, it should be automatic. Because
I think this helps them, quite honestly, because this removes a fly from their ointment. Because now Elementor goes, like, you want Elementor? Fine, come to Elementor hosting. WordPress makes money only on VIP. WordPress.com makes some money, but it's like not really their main focus. The thing about this is it gets the conversation away from, comparing Gutenberg to Elementor, doesn't it? Right? Like, you want Elementor, go over there.
Yeah.
You want to
I
talk
think there's also another element to this. I call it hybridization. There used to be a very clear difference between the WordPress and SaaS community. I think you're seeing in a few products that this divide is breaking down in a way that you see it in Castos, you see it in a number of products that they offer. They offer a product that you can utilize with Gutenberg, or you can host yourself, and then they have another product which kind of bolts on, or it can be like this, hosted. What I also think, now, when it comes to Divi, I don't know about Divi, because in some ways they seem to be leaning in a way that they were going to integrate it with Gutenberg, and be more blocked based. But they might also decide to have their own hosted, and then you got the whole issue about what GoDaddy and the big traditional hosting providers, they must be looking at Wix and Squarespace and now Elementor.
Well, it just blurs the lines, rightly so. Like, when you look at it in terms of what's the future for anybody, absolutely, for plugin authors in WordPress, my prediction, 2022, I'm actually involved in these conversations, and we know our good friend Vito's product, Atarim, does that, is that they took a plugin, they made it SaaS. One of the main reasons is because when it's a SaaS product, all of those previous misconceptions of pricing about plugins disappear. People are thrilled to pay blankety blank per month because that's how SaaS works. Whereas in the WordPress space, it would be very tough. I don't know of anybody right now who has a plugin where they're paying $75 a month for the plugin. But in a SaaS, yeah, sure, that's one of the plans.
Yeah, well,
And it does seem like a natural progression from like something you pay for one time to then something you're paying for every year because the one time is not sustainable in the support department, to then a SaaS product, and then you have more control and added value and more income
and upsells inside of this Elementor hosting. Guaranteed, there's going to be a dashboard that says, click here to install this, click here, and all those will be premium plugins that have marketplace deals with Elementor.
Or there'll be free versions of the plugins that you do, which is what WordPress.com are now doing. There's 8 plugins in there. There's Yoast, I think, is the only one that's not WooCommerce. But there might be an SEO plugin in there. I can't remember. I looked at the yesterday, but I listened to Matt Mullenweg on another podcast, what Bob does, the Woo podcast, and I think it was Ronald Giselle, and I can't remember the lady's name, and I'm really upset that I can't remember her name, but Kathy, I think. But Ronald is part of Yith plugins, which is a direct competitor for WooCommerce, and I thought that was quite funny that he was interviewing the guy that bought WooCommerce. But Matt it's the first time I've actually heard Matt actively sell. He said, I'm looking for big websites that are using an e-commerce solution that are turning over hundreds of millions a year or hundreds of thousands of products, and I want them on WordPress.com. So if you've got one of those, come and see me because you can help us develop WooCommerce. And he was mentioning the fact that WooCommerce actually isn't making any money because it's not that much of a commercial product. You listen to the podcast, it's a really interesting podcast. But to finish this one off, if I can, WooCommerce.com are now developing a marketplace. Divi developed a marketplace, which is going fantastically for a really good number of vendors. Elegant Marketplace had one. We had Envato. Well, we've got Envato. We've got all that. Elementor will, without a shadow of a doubt, have a marketplace. But because they've now got this hosting situation, it will be much easier, like you say, Spence, for that marketplace to be in the dashboard of WordPress, right? So if you want Bertha, if you want Launchify, if you want an LMS, you're just going to click a button and it'll be an auto install. And they will be going out there doing deals, maybe be doing it via people that go along and approach them and say, actually, if you want to do this deal, you're going to have to pay us to do. If you want our plugin, you're going to have to pay us,
10 million people.
Well, exactly. So those things are going to happen. I like the way this is going. I like the way that Elementor have basically dropped the mic, and they've announced to Beaver Builder and all the other page builders and Divi, they've said, look, we've done it first. We know you're going to follow, but we've got 10 million people to market to now. Right?
And it's enough. I mean, honestly, it's enough. It's not it's not the end point, but it's the starting point where you fork in the road, not necessarily. Ironically, remember, I was thinking that Wix thing would be interesting as a way for the Wix guy to go like this, but it doesn't matter because Elementor, for their reasons, they don't have to worry about the WordPress core. That's free. They don't have to worry about most of the plugins. They're free. They can just focus on making it in a container where they get more users from what they're offering.
And because of the state of the word that happens every year, and where Matt always says you're free to fork it, or you're free just to use it, that's where WordPress as a GPL piece of software actually loses its power now, because people are saying they're taking a power pull and they're saying, right, we'll use WordPress. It's totally free. It's brilliant. And actually, if we want to adjust that version of WordPress just for our users, you've told us we can. So we're gonna, and we can put anything in the dashboard.
Well, sure, as long as you've got the team to keep up with it.
Well, Elementor have. They've got plenty of money. They've had lots of VC money invested. They're going to
sure. I mean, they've got a big crew. They can do it. But not everybody is in a position to just say, "Oh, sure, I'll fork core."
A few out there that can do it.
I mean, forking core is a fool's errand to a certain degree, but what they can do is patch a lot of the problems. Like, for example, with the Gutenberg thing, Munir and I were speaking about this because there was that new feature, gosh forbid we needed it, that allowed you in the list view to drag stuff up and down, right? The blocks. And it was like super easy to do. And before this 5.9 incorporated it, there was another plugin I think I recommended a couple weeks ago. And he says, well, it's coming. It's in 5.9. I'm like, but the problem is it's not yet, but now it is. Think of a laundry list of 100 items. Those could all be, add-ons or fixes, and not necessarily in the core, but you go, here's core and here's all of our curated fixes. And then as it develops, they move them over. So
they just make it better. Right, so move on. I mean, just a quick spot vote. Do we think it's a good thing or a bad thing? Quick, yes or no? Good, yes. Bad, no.
Yeah, I think it's good, but you need to go for the break because we've taken up almost half an hour on this.
All the time. So we're just going to take our break for another sponsor, and we'll be back in a second. Right, we're back from our break, and it's been exciting talking about Elementor, and I'm proving that I'm not a particularly good host, but never mind. We are now on a different thing where we are looking at, I think, Jonathan, you posted this one up. It's not anything against Amazon, is it, by any chance? But Amazon paid for a high school course, and here's what they teach. So you put it in here, Jonathan. You lead this one. Off you go.
I just think it's delicious. Amazon, they give so much to this show. It's just delicious. To say, it's pure 1984 truth. Hatred is truth. Love is war. It's just pure 1984 stuff. They got the posters in the high school. Customer obsession, bias for action, delivery results. It's basically the story is that they're giving 50,000 to this high school and they do an Amazon course to be indoctrinated, ready for their warehouse jobs.
It's a logistics and supply chain course. It's basically to be ready to oppress the workers at the warehouse jobs.
You don't have to.
It's such a delicious story.
But you don't have to. It's quite clear, Jonathan. It's quite clear. You do not have to do the internship at Amazon. You go to a logistical company. So they've been quite open about it, and anybody that throws money at a college or a university to help them along their way, surely that's got to be applauded, right? Whether or not they're saying that this is like an apprenticeship and it's like a university for dealing with logistics, which is tough, right? Because, you know, I had a package delivered yesterday somewhere in America, and, you know, it left the destination at 2 p.m. and said it will be somewhere at the end of the day. Now, what's the end of the day? Let's get this right.
Yes,
Tell
whose
me
day?
what time it's going to arrive. Yeah, exactly. What is the end of the day? It's midnight, so we'll get it right. What do you reckon, Spence?
Yeah. So this reminds me of a little bit is you could look at this both ways, but let's just break it apart. When I was a psychology student in college, we learned this thing called the Milgram experiment. And essentially they took normal, happy, everyday kids and they essentially made them like prison camp guards with authority over their other students. And if the other student didn't do what they were told or say what they said, they were able to deliver actual electric shocks to the other students.
They were fake electric shocks.
No, they were real at first. But the point was, it wasn't enough to hurt them. It was enough to like get a reaction. But the point was, ultimately, I think they backed down the experiment, but they carried on, and the point still remains. They were shocked that normal kids could be basically turned into, you know, like prison guards that would.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I
here's
think you're
where
confusing two things. One is the Stanford prison experiment, and one is Milgram's electric shocks, which I've read a lot about. And for instance, they had a bunch of people playing the
Can you
experimenter.
hey, Sally, can you
pressing-
imagine me? I just ram it straight up, wouldn't I?
Pressing so the instructor kept telling the person who was doing the shocks, "No, you can't stop. No,
Right.
you can't stop."
Right.
So it was
They
not
were
just
turning
like
them into monsters, and
of
they were
their
willing
free will,
to become.
but it was a really clear demonstration of how you can get people into situations like going along with the Nazis.
Like Nazi prison guards, why they would go ahead and do stuff. Like normal everyday citizens would torture their former neighbor to death or kill them. And the point was that humans are capable of this. Now, the reason I bring this in is that this thing could be looked at as one of two ways. It could be looked at on the positive side, that what if we actually had a model going forward where corporations like Amazon could find a way to spend their money to fix the real problems of education, to fix the infrastructure problem. In other words, incentivize their tax things in a way that builds tangible stuff. Even if it's the Amazon classroom, it's like the super modern thing. The problem comes from the nature of the curriculum, which does seem quite clearly to be sort of like a Milgram experiment of help us understand how you and all your friends think so that we can devise a way to turn you into slaves and then torture you if you take 3 seconds.
You do understand this is how public education in this country got started.
It always has been that way. It was a create factory workers.
It's the company towns.
They're coming
training
back to it.
good little workers.
But that is why I bring this up. Unlike in those days when it had a spin on it, we actually are at a fork of the road where we're seeing other examples of this going on without the evil undertones of it, right? We see companies that are doing things like we're in favor of a 4-day work week and paying for people's insurance and not telling them that they have to do these weird things or get psychological information from them. So it's really a lot about where the alignment of the corporate management is and also where the financial incentives lie from doing infrastructure. So I think this is like those robots from Boston Dynamics, right? They're either going to eat our faces off or they're going to be doing our bidding. And the difference is who's making the choice about where to put that energy and technology. And Bezos, there was a picture of him. I still order every day from Amazon. But the difference between like Bezos and Elon Musk is lots of conversations. But Bezos is in his swinging, Florida, I'm a pimp with his little, girlfriend on the beach, like trying to look so awesome. And then Musk is not necessarily doing that. I think Bezos is evil in his core. I really do believe that he can't be trusted because this is an offshoot of that. Whereas other people like his ex-wife or even Bill Gates, they don't seem to have that thing where it's obviously they're out doing their own interest. And that's what concerns me about this.
What enough about Bezos is he's pure James Bond villain, isn't he? You can see him. You can see him in a Bond film straight off with the cat, in the Skylab, with the sat. It's pure James Bond, isn't it? I just love it.
With his minor shareholding of Amazon, what is it? How have you picked on him? Because he's the former CEO now. but he's actually made something like $842 billion for other people via Amazon, right? So where are these other people that have made these $842 billion? Why aren't they tarred with the same brush as Bezos? Why? Because Bezos is the head of the company, and he thought
nobody knows. Nobody knows. It's like when you look at Mercedes-Benz or all the German companies after the war. A lot of people figured out who made all the money for producing Zyklon B or the airplanes or whatever, and they get their shit handed to them. But there hasn't been a reckoning yet because people in America are so effing greedy, even me, that I don't want to break up the thing that delivers my package to me 5 seconds after I press the button. So that's why he gets away with it. And the tax thing is coming to reckon. I'm not saying today or tomorrow, but there's definitely that. There was even some people on, God forbid the word, Fox News they put a socialist on who was really well spoken, and he just exemplified why this whole tax thing is so weird. And if that day ever comes, then those companies are going to have a real branding and an image problem, aren't they? Because
also, Andrew, I also think it's a side tax scenario. It's a bit like what's happening in Britain. You know, as an outsider, you hear all this about the Prime Minister and about these parties, and you wonder, why is everybody getting upset about him having a few parties? Where you got laws trying to be passed that would stop people from protesting, which is a fundamental attack on the basic freedoms of British people. But there's hardly any I think people know they're under attack. But the thing that upsets them is what you think they shouldn't be getting upset. You think they would get, and I think the same thing applies to Amazon.
Well, I think part of it is not just that it was a party. It was a party at a time when they were telling everybody else you have to like stay home and wear masks and not socialize. So the hypocrisy of it, it's like Gavin Newsom at the French Laundry.
Yeah, and it's our beloved Queen was left on her own to mourn her husband in the church.
Right.
So, and she couldn't travel anymore. But that's you know, I've got a very good friend of mine who's slightly right of Attila the Hun, and he said, why
like
should
my husband?
Yeah, right. Why should you care what they do? Why should we care? Why,
right.
You know, we've had the fastest vaccine out. You know, fastest vaccine rollout ever of all Europe and the world. We've got this, we've done that, we've got this, we've done that, and I said, well, people care because it's Boris, and he's broken the rules again, and he continues to break the rules again, and he is a person of responsibility.
Yeah, but I was trying to.
I don't care, but anyway.
Yeah, I was just trying to explain why.
Yeah, but we don't see Bezos in this country. You obviously got him in your Periscope all the time because you live in the States. In the UK, we hear very little about Bezos. All that I hear about Bezos is you slagging him off, saying he's a psychopath, you know, or whatever. But you know, that's what I'm seeing from just this.
I just formulate the news stories, listeners and viewers, and Amazon are delicious. They provide some of the most entertaining stories. Shall we go on to story?
Yeah, I just want to say I'm mostly bothered in this story by the picture of the desks because the chairs are on the wrong side of those IKEA tables. Those tables are curves, and the desks are supposed to be on the inner circle of the curve, but they're on the outer. So I'm wondering who set that up. That's bothering my sensibility. my OCD is
fucking up your equilibrium, Spencer. And I've just got to remind my co-host that I'm the host, and I'll decide when we move on. So anyway, one of the last things that I want to say about this story, because Jonathan brought it up, is that, as I said, I want to just reiterate, if anybody throws money at education, the educators need to look at the agenda of that person throwing money at that education institute. And if they can look into their deep soul and say, this is a reasonable amount of money for this course, can we divert some of it to actually teach people something that we feel worthwhile, then that's the penalty that they're going to have to pay. That's the kind of moral dilemma that these educators are in, because we all know, apart from the big schools that you've got over there, the Harvards and the Browns and all that kind of stuff, they've got plenty of money. But, you know, some colleges and universities, and specifically in this country as well, academies that we've got, they are really suffering financially. So it's very difficult not to take the money.
The reason why they're suffering, it's
Well, it's also the case with any nonprofit. You got a big donor who gives you money to do X, you do X.
Well, yeah, I mean, I get that, but you try and also divert some funds to where you can have some other kind of type of education. That's all I'm saying. This is why these people take money. Right. So moving on, we've had 5.9. There was a great hoo-ha about it, and loads of tweets and loads of Facebook posts and quite a lot of advertising. And actually, I've never seen Matt Mullenweg in more podcasts and blog posts and interviews in such a short period of time.
Yeah, it won't come on mine though.
Well, I can't really blame him. I wouldn't if you didn't pay me fortunes. You know, the whole point is that he has he. We were saying last year that he's got no PR or he needs a PR machine. Has he got a PR management firm now? Because I'm seeing him. He's omnipresent at the moment. He's on CNBC or whatever it is. He's on YouTube. He's on every single podcast that you can think of, banging the drum for WordPress. Have the VCs put a sharp stick up his bum and said, right, Matt, you got to get out there and you got to sell this thing because
Can I quickly respond to that?
Return. No, you can't. I haven't finished.
Did you hear
I
that?
haven't finished. I will give you a chance. So because I'd nearly finished and you bloody interrupted me again. So stop it. So right at the end of my point. So the point is that I'm trying to make. Does the panel think that Matt Mullenweg, before we talk about 5.9 and 6, does the panel think that Matt Mullenweg has now at last got himself a booking agent and a PR? Jonathan.
Yeah, I put a kind of response to that in the WP-Tonic Mastermind Facebook page. I thought it was quite amusing. If you want to see it, listeners and viewers, please join us. Spencer's very active. I am. Andrew is responsive when he stopped smoking. But half the time I can't even understand what the great leaders even saying half the time. It doesn't, half of what comes out of his mouth doesn't even make any sense to me. So I've given up, really. Be quite true.
He's promoting open source, he's promoting WooCommerce, and he's promoting WordPress.com. Spencer, what do you reckon?
It's clear that something has pushed his button, but I think it had a lot to do with the fact that this is, quite honestly, prior to 5.9, didn't we all complain about the fact that nothing meaningful ever gets updated? So I think this is the first time he has something to talk about that he won't get shit all over his head about because the accessibility is broken or this isn't broken or why do we need to press a rectangular button instead of a square button to make something happen. And now he's got something to talk. But I did watch the maskless reveal of this at the WordCamp thing that, was in New York, and it was just, I have nothing that I can say with regard to Matt's presentation other than he seems to be happy to just sort of like be the counselor on the bus, and when the kids have something cool to talk about, he sort of says, and Bobby, what are you working on? And Susie, what are you working on? Look, the kids are
to be serious, I think Heather had some great insight, actually, Spencer. I didn't realise, and I think Heather really put it on the button. I think he's bored, Spencer. I think
maybe
he's
just
bored
not
with
empowered enough to take a stand because politically there's a disadvantage to him being too. Well, I'm not going to compare myself to him, but like I like to throw rocks into the pond and see where the ripples go. I think he has to be very careful about what he says, where and when, because he's got a lot of people that he could easily put into a bad position or vice versa, right? He has a lot more to lose by saying the wrong thing than to just say less. And I think that's the job of a CEO in some ways, but other CEOs are very progressive, like we were just referring to, where they're outspoken. Like, again, I'm not going to compare them, but Elon Musk says crazy shit all day long every day just to see what happens, right? So that's what
and no one can stop him, for better or worse.
I mean, but that's when you're not owned by anybody, that's what you can do,
Yeah,
perhaps.
but just to be serious about it, fundamentally, there was a group of people that really didn't want WordPress to change fundamentally. The fundamental need for a better editor and a more modern way of building website, I totally support, and I totally understand the need to improve the experience when it comes to WordPress.com, which is really very linked to what we were discussing with story one. The needs for those fundamental things I totally support. And I think in some areas in the WordPress community, my position is not being honestly described, because I totally support the fundamentals of Gutenberg. And what my problem is he was advised that the way he constructed and how this project would be done was not the best way for it to do. And he chose not to listen to very intelligent advice, as far as I'm concerned. And he decided to be the project lead, which I thought was crazy. And we're 2.5 years down the road. And where I differ from you, Spencer, is I see something that's half finished. And I don't think it's good enough. I just don't think it's good enough. And I think there's a lot of people in the WordPress community that just won't be honest about it. I'm not prepared to be one of them. It doesn't mean I hate Matt or I think he's a terrible person, but the truth is the truth.
But it's beyond him at this point, isn't it? I mean, if we think about it in terms of like the Elementor move, we think about it in terms of my focal point, my other 2022. I've been talking about the stack, and now the stack is moving into the enterprise. So I'm going to be talking about WordPress for enterprise. It's really besides Matt anymore, because all of the players, the big money, the consolidations, the partnerships, the strategy, it's all going on regardless of what he says or doesn't say. So to a certain extent, I think that's the exciting part about WordPress. Live by the sword, die by the sword. WordPress being open source, unlike Microsoft, we don't have to worry about being pulled into court by Bill and Ballmer or anything like that when we do what we want with WordPress. As long as you don't use the name, that's basically the only thing you can't do. And I think that's exciting beyond belief.
Talking about that, I wanted to I put a thing in there about Jarvis having to change their name because Marvel said change your name. Now they decided not to go to court, and I feel for Jarvis. I honestly do. I feel for any company that uses a proprietary name or takes a chance. Now Jarvis is actually an acronym as far as Marvel is concerned. I don't know it. I haven't got it up so that I can't read it, but we all know it's from the Iron Man series, and we know that Vision has come from that. And Paul Bettany plays the Vision thing. What I wanted to say about that, and it hasn't been included, so I'm just going to very, very quickly say that, is that when we're dealing with these very, very big money proprietary companies that want to have copyright on a word, it drives me crazy, right? Because Jarvis is a name. It's somebody's name. Somebody in the world is called Jarvis. So
right. I mean, it's a trademark. The rules about trademarks as names for things are tricky.
Crazy.
Yes,
crazy.
And they're probably different in different countries. I only know really about the US, but if they can claim that the Jarvis in Marvel is in the same category as the Jarvis software as far as trademarks go, that is to say, it's not being used as a person's name. They're not going to sue somebody who wants to call their kid Jarvis. Then legally they can make that claim.
No, I get that, but the point I'm trying to make is that they could have said to Marvel could have said to Jarvis, the AI, all right, you want to use it? What a great idea, because you're Jarvis.ai, brilliant. Why don't you pay us a licensing fee? You got 50,000 customers or 35,000 customers that are paying you $30 or $50 or $100, whatever. We'll take $3 per customer. Every time you sign up a customer, your license fee is $3, right? So, and you pay that to Marvel as a license fee. It's only a merchandising deal. It's like a merchandising deal. Why didn't they do that? Conversely,
not enough control, I bet.
Right. So well, yeah, it's an honesty thing, isn't it? But WordPress could do exactly the same thing. They ban people from using the word WordPress. But if I want to go WordPressteacher.com and I'm charging X amount for a learning platform to teach people how to use WordPress, but I need to use the word WordPress in there, WordPress could actually come along to me and say, you're using our trademark. You have now got to pay a license, which then goes into a foundation. And eventually that foundation will pay all the contributors. Boom. Paying the contributors is gone.
But how do they decide who to give the license to? Because otherwise they're really diluting their.
It's dilution and it's slippery slope, and it's a management issue. Because once you go down that path, Andrew, you have a full-time team that has to be in charge of that, and then you have to also worry about pricing, and it becomes just a secondary job for the company. That
it becomes money.
Yeah, but Marvel
we're sitting here complaining that they're not doing their primary job well enough.
Marvel made so much money off of the Iron Man franchise in the billions that, like, the amount of money they could charge for this company to use it in such a predominantly similar way. I mean, the whole idea, like,
well, how much do you think they get from an Iron Man model from Mattel? You know, it's the same deal. It's a merchandising deal. What I'm saying is
because that's the product of the character or of the thing in the movie, versus this is a different product but lending or borrowing from the thing in the movie. Like, if you do
I get it. I absolutely get you, and I know that you're an attorney at law and everything like that, and I get it. But being the simple-minded person that I am, I, as Marvel, would have said, no problem at all. Change it to the Iron Man face. Pay us a license. Get on with it. Right. So we're going to go now on to looking at.
I mean, that actually might have made sense if they had done that. Would they use the Marvel thing? Yeah. Then Marvel would have gotten the benefit. But I think that's probably the issue of them staying in their lane. Like, Marvel sort of like, why do we want to even open up that door? You know?
Yeah. Why not? Anyway, right. So looking ahead, we haven't got long now, but looking ahead to WordPress 6.0, I'm going to go on to Sally here because you're a Gutenberg and actually Spence Gutenberg advocates, let's say. How do you feel about 5.9 in 35 seconds and a half? And then for the other 25 seconds, 24 and a half seconds, to talk us through this 6.0.
Full-site editing has me more excited about WordPress than I have been probably since the initial launch of Gutenberg. And I think a large part of the reason that we're seeing people all over, and you may have heard the other Matt's two-part interview with Josepha, was that they really wanted to over-communicate about this because they had done such a bad job with the communication of the initial Gutenberg rollout, and poor Josepha had to, like, go around and hear people tell her exactly how they felt for months afterwards. And, you know, it's unfinished. That is indisputable. You could use full-site editing as it exists in 5.9 to build a site without too complicated a structure. I can think of some sites, you know, that I could redo with it right now. But for the more complex sites, it's going to have to wait for, you know, at least 6.0. And, you know, until we have a slightly more sophisticated version of the query loop. But I had my meetup members play with it on Sunday right before it actually launched, and people were, you know, first of all, it was the biggest group I've seen for a while, and second, people were very interested. People are also puzzled by some things. You know, there were some new to WordPress people who were on one of the Learn groups, and they were so confused by the fact that the you know, the content block for the page template said post content. And, you know, I've put in a Gutenberg issue about, can we change the labels to not confuse the newbies? But I am very pleased.
Cool. Good. Spence.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things that are still left out, including this whole weird full site editing and how that's going to happen, and patterns versus themes, and that conversation about the why are we having Matt say have 5,000 different block themes versus one canvas type theme that, you know, things apply to. But
they're working on letting you save all of your block templates across themes.
Right. But in practice, I have made it my workflow with anybody at all, even the Elementor and especially the Divi people, to say you owe it to yourself to become familiar and start using this in practice. Because in practice, with just a few other little helper plugins, it's past the point of being useful. It's functionally, efficient to use it. And everything I build now is just in Gutenberg, and including some of the new stuff this week, because I find it weird to say this because I was at the time such a big fan, but this is similar to like when you had an old phone and you thought like it was so fast, and then you try the new phone and you're like, you didn't know what you're missing. That Elementor is a drag to have on top of Gutenberg. I mean, it's just, I can't be bothered with it now.
And I get that with because page builders do, and I'll be shot for this, but page builders do slow your website down, but they speed up the website development. So once you get
there's some things that you got to rebuild your toolkit of stuff. Yeah.
So there's a learning curve that we're going through. I'm loving the way that Gutenberg is going. I've always been an advocate of it, and I'm learning it more and more. And my devs are learning it. I mean, one guy did say,
I don't think Elementor's target is even WordPress. I think their target is SiteGround and Wix, and there's a host of other.
Sorry, John. I don't think their target is the actual vendors. I think that they're not going out to put people out of business. There's plenty of 455 million websites out there currently at a rate of 252,000 every day being published. So those are quite. If you look at the WP engine, 628 billion, market, whatever they did, whenever they did their thing. This is a massive market. It's not going to get any. I don't think it's going to get any smaller. Yes, we're going to have more virtual conferences. Yes, we're going to have all these kind of things. But for the next few years, I think that the WordPress hosts are going to be absolutely fine. So, on that note, we are at the recommendation stage. I believe, if I'm being the host that I should be.
It seems like just
Sally,
a
what's
minute
your
ago we
recommendation?
started the show. And now it's
My
over.
recommendation is WordPress Social Learning. They're offering a whole bunch of classes, both for end users and for developers, about full site editing and about other things. And I've got the link in Slack. They're the social learning meetups, and I've been going to several of them. So they're working very hard to make sure. I mean, the training team is like busting out new trainings, like 2 or 3 a day at this rate. So they really are trying to do a better job of launching than they did before. So,
and there it is.
Yes, that one.
Brilliant. I think that WordPress need to do this, and they need to improve more on that, because we already say RTFM, don't we? When, product developers, we say, please read the manual before you come to support us. And this will, I think.
But there has to be a manual first.
Well, no, exactly. So this is like our manual. So go to the manual. Jonathan, what's your recommendation?
Yeah, if you're looking to build out really great looking frequently asked questions or help sections, got a couple recommendation plugins. One is Better Docs. It works with Elementor, I think Gutenberg or most of the page builders. Another one is Heroic. Here, I think that's pronounced correct. Heroic KB. That's another plugin. It was recommended by Brian Jackson to me. I haven't personally used it, but if it's recommended by Brian and he uses it in his self, it should be top notch. So they're 2 great solutions if you're looking to build out frequently asked or help sections, and you want that kind of Zendesk professional kind of look. These provide a great solution, Andrew.
Cool. Spencer, what you got?
I was going to post something unusual for me, which was a link to a Reddit article. It's showing that Reddit's CDN is broken, so the link works, or did, but anyway, it was somebody who posted about they automated their job over a year ago and haven't told anybody. And the reason I liked it was it's basically an example of something that I've always tried to do. the basic premise was somebody with a little scripting capability, not that dissimilar than any WordPress person, got a job as an IT person at a law firm to basically take the documents that the lawyers made from a Dropbox and index them so they were searchable, and like, you know, and they realized they could just write a script, or they borrowed a script for $5 from Fiverr, and they made it work. But since the pandemic didn't require them to show up at the office, they were essentially able to just check in their computer in the morning, spend the whole day doing whatever they want, checked in one last time at night, and nobody's ever said boo about it because the thing works perfectly fine. But they're collecting like $90,000 a year. So they were feeling either stupid or guilty and wanted to talk about it. I think stupid because maybe they'll get caught. But then a bunch of other people got on. And I want to say, this is what I used to do. Jonathan and I met, like 1WD and First Web Designer. It was to say, we're in WordPress now. The snow globe is being shaken up. All these people who knew how the remote control worked in Classic or with their old page builder are all like me and my mom now, like, hey man, like, how do I push the buttons? There are so many ways for somebody with WordPress skill to go in and find all these clients that all you're doing is you know where to push the buttons. So I encourage anybody to think out of the box, because it pains my heart when I read on the Facebook groups like, I can't find a client to design a website. I'm like, well, that's not the pain people are having. People are having a pain, like, you know, with the little nuances. And this shows that the world is an amazing place when you look under rocks. So.
I totally agree. Right, my recommendation is because I've been watching this guy as well. He's from Pontypool, and he's got a lovely way of about him, and he does lots of reviews. And he reviewed a plugin that I'm obviously involved in as a co-founder. We didn't ask him to do it, as far as I'm aware. I certainly didn't ask him to do it, and he gave a really honest review: the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful. And I think I'm in line with Sally's recommendation of learn.wordpress. It's go to YouTube and just search for WP-Tuts. The link will be in the show notes.
He did a fantastic review, didn't he?
He did. Well, but it was honest. You know, he absolutely said the bad bits, and it allows us as product developers to go there. But also, we've got so much learning you can do on WordPress in YouTube. So, you know, go to WP-Tuts, look around for other people's learning. But I think he's one of the most honest reviewers out there. He did reach out to me and said, I don't like this bit, I don't like this, what are you doing about it? I said, well, nothing at the minute, because we didn't know about that. You found a little nice thing that it does, which is right. Yeah. But anyway, so now we are nearly at the end of this, and I just want to make a couple of recommendations. Make sure that you go to our Facebook group to join in the conversation. We like to point you also to our regular podcasts, if you can possibly go. So go to WP-Tonic.com podcast-episodes. And we also would like you to go to our recommendations, where people who sponsor this show and allow us to, certainly me, make a little bit of a cock up at the beginning, give us money for it, sign up to our newsletter there, and also look at all the recommendations. And that's it from us today, I believe. And thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. Say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.